Hello, and a very, very warm welcome to the Women Leading Show. I am thrilled to be here today with my guest from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm not going to do accents, I'm really very bad at them. So thrilled to introduce you today to Caroline Durham of the Legal Policy. She's the Legal Policy Director at Georgia in the United States. Welcome, Caroline.
Oh, Jo, it's so great to be here with you, and I'm really excited for us having a chance to talk, and it's always a joy to be with you, and I love the work that the Women Leading Show is doing, so thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, it's a pleasure. We were connected through one of my dear soul sisters, Teresa Corso, who I know is likewise to you. So I'm really thrilled to have you on the show today. I'm Jo Baldwin Trott, the host of Women Leading. I'm also the editor and one of the authors in the very first Women Leading book, which is available on Amazon, as most things are these days. Can you buy a car there yet? I don't know. That'll be next. Buy your car on Amazon. Anyway, digressing, but here is the Women Leading book. It's available on Amazon. It's 18 stories, amazing stories from men and women about leadership and incredible stories of inspiration, whether you are at the beginning of what you feel is your leading a leadership journey, or you are a fully fledged leader. So I'm really doubly thrilled to have Caroline on our show today. Firstly, because of what her role and her work is in, and secondly, because Caroline is one of the authors in the forthcoming Women Leading book, which is called Women Leading in Our New World. So this is very much a conversation and messages of inspiration for leadership moving forward. I'm going to send it to every male leader I can think of, because actually I feel that this will be a beautiful message to male leaders who are currently in the roles that women actually could be doing instead. But let's not me go down my ranty road. Let's stick with you, Caroline, because you have a job that I truly completely admire. I just think it's remarkable to have the kind of job and work in the field you do, and I'm going to add, especially as a woman. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a good day to be doing this work. It's a good time to be doing this work, and progress is being made. And just to give the viewers a little bit of a taste. So I spent 30 years as a public defender in state and federal court. And what that means is I represented people who were not able to afford a lawyer, that were charged with all sorts of crimes. And my real focus was serious crimes. And what I learned in those 30 years is it's important to have good lawyers representing people to fight for their freedom, to right the system when the wrong people are arrested, when an injustice is carried out. But what I also figured out, Jo, very quickly, was you could be the best lawyer possible when you're working in a broken system. And one of the analogies I use is this. Mario Andretti is a professional race car driver who wins all sorts of national big championships. But if you put him in a car that's got 3 wheels and 2 spark plugs, it is never going to run right. So I could be the best lawyer in the world, and it doesn't change the system I'm working in. And so Georgia Appleseed came on my radar as I started to do volunteer work, and our focus is systems change. We're a law and policy organization that looks at the systems and the inequities in those systems, ranging from schools and how that impacts children and how they're disciplined, and the lack of services Black and brown and LGBTQ and poor children get, so that there's a greater likelihood that they end up in prison and become clients of public defenders. And so the information I had around what I learned, every person I represented, every person I met through my work as a public defender had tremendous skills and gifts that had been snuffed out or othered. And so they oftentimes became my client because they only had 2 bad choices. And so my role now is to say, how do we give every child and every family, right now the focus is in Georgia, the resources so that they get a strong education and they have healthy homes to live in and they can thrive.
Wow, that's no mean feat, Caroline, is it, to take on that? But it's fantastic that you are involved in this, because obviously I've got a lot of personal experience from one of my previous jobs. Anyway, I totally agree. It used to sicken me disgust me and just completely sadden me. How many wonderful souls and beautiful, boys and girls, mostly boys, young men with clearly so much potential, so smart. They were so good at committing crime. They had to be smart to be that good at committing crime. Let's just be really kind of pragmatic about it. It takes a lot to be quite good at committing crime, and there's certainly certain types of crime. And actually, they were just bright and smart. But like you say, there was a statement you just gave, which was, "Oh, they only have two bad choices." That breaks my heart to hear that statement. But I think for any parent who is trying to bring up their children and give them as many great choices as they possibly can give them, and this is what this is such a fundamental, pivotal point, isn't it? Actually, these children often only have two bad choices, which is just catastrophic.
One of the other pieces, Jo, that we work at Georgia Appleseed around, we call about dismantling the school to prison pipeline. So what we know in the United States is the way in which we discipline children, the way in which they are engaged when they are acting in a way that is not how the grown folks want them to act. If they end up in the juvenile court system, the likelihood is skyrocketed that they end up in prison. So our focus on that too is to look at how we're responding to behavior. And what we know, children and really grown folks too, a child's behavior is communication. So in some respects, sometimes they don't have the words to express where they're at and they've been through a trauma. This is a traumatic time right now for the world, just with the pandemic. In the United States, with what we're seeing is happening at the hands of police officers, with mostly Black men, but Black women too, and other traumas. And so a child comes to school, we believe that a child wakes up in the morning and wants to have a good day, but they're maybe not in a stable home. Maybe their parents are not around. All the things that come in, and they come to school and they respond to something. They're trying to communicate and they don't use their words. If the response is, we're going to put you out of school, that means that they're not getting education. That means they're getting messages that they're less than. And so part of what we look at is the behavior in a way that lifts the child up and addresses what's going on, as opposed to saying you're bad and we're going to put you out. And there are a lot of wonderful models that are in Georgia, but that really is about saying, what are we doing at that early stage to address and engage and say what's happening. We focus a lot on children who are in foster care. So they've been taken from their biological families. That in and of itself is a trauma, right? And so what we know is the discipline rates for out of school discipline, so long-term suspensions and expulsions, are higher for children in foster care, again, for Black and brown children, for LGBTQ children, for children in poverty. And part of what we work to do is to identify and lift up solutions to that. What are the school-based resources that are there? What are the school justice partnerships? We have courthouses where the juvenile courts and the school districts are coming together to say, we know what the numbers tell us and what are our alternatives, because the juvenile court judges started saying, look, if you bring these kids to us, we have a limited toolkit and we also know the long-term range. So to convene and get people talking about important, supportive, creative ways that keep our children in school, that increase graduation rates, that mean they become more productive as individuals, and that's better for the community. So it's a lot. It's doable, though. That's what I'm going to tell you, Jo. It is doable.
Wow, that's good to hear, because it just my ex-teacher head is picking now, and I just know how tough it is to, it's literally a step at a time, isn't it? But we have this technology to completely centralize and dispel relevant programs. It's all there, isn't it, if it's used correctly, and isn't just another program that lands in a head teacher's lap and here you've got to do this, because they are phenomenally busy. As much as the nursing and the doctors of this world have had a tough time, I also feel the teaching staff
absolutely
have had a remarkably stressful time trying to keep everything going, and as well as having to implement all this new legislation. But I think it's fantastic that you're going back to that root cause and that root behavior. And how exactly are you how exactly are you supporting the change of that behaviour for that one individual? How's that looking?
Sure. Well. So part of what Georgia Appleseed does is to bring together the experts, to bring together the agency heads. In some instances, we support and represent the foster children in the disciplinary hearings. We talk about school-based behavioral health. So school has for years been more than reading and writing. I mean, that's central. Like you talk about that role of the teacher in the classroom, but it really is. School is a primary community center. And it's a place where other services, it might be counseling that needs to be provided. It might be supports around education. It might be supports to deal with those components that are going to cause behavior that could get a child, quote, in trouble. And so by lifting up the models and ensuring that resources are there, so we do work at the State House, so from a legislative perspective, to engaging and convening community members to say, what do you see the solutions to be? And so what that does is, what are the services that each school needs for their particular community, for their particular needs? We have a program called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention Systems. And that is a tiered model that says there is a foundational piece that all schools should have for all students that is about social emotional learning. The atmosphere we're creating, a positive school climate, so that by lifting up all of the children, then we see that there are some children that need some additional services. And then you get to the top of the tier, which are sort of special education needs. And so through these types of structures, we're able to lift up the service providers, lift out things like the Department of Education, the Department of Family Services, and have them work together. Some of what Georgia Appleseed does is to bring those agencies together to de-silo them. And it works real well when it's there. Part of the challenge though, Jo, and this is not just specific to Georgia, many states across the United States, you have Atlanta and Georgia, and then as you get out from Atlanta, it's much more rural. What that means oftentimes is the resources are fewer. And so you have a school in Atlanta where you have 11 different employees doing different pieces and responsibilities within the school. And then you get to a place like Troup County, which is more rural, and you've got a school counselor that's wearing 11 hats. And so the other component is a really big challenge to say, how do we ensure services and resources are there for each school to provide those services? And I think that part of the challenge there, I talk about every child is our child. Now, I don't have any biological children. I have godchildren, I have nieces and nephews. I have, friends' kids that are as important to me as my own child would be. My responsibility is not just to the children that are in my home, but the kids at the bus stop, the kids in the neighborhood store. And so if we can begin to remember that we are all connected and that when every child succeeds, we all succeed, so that this fight over what money gets spent at what school and we spend more money on taxes, well, you've got more money to give to taxes. You've got more money to give to supports, so that there was an equity in the way schools have what they need. So these services and these approaches to children lifts up all kids. And I think that's really critical, because again, as we do that, for those in the audience, y'all, who need to know the economic piece, it's about the dollar. If we spend money at the school level, what that does in the long run is it means that money that's being spent, when Jo was a police officer and I was a public defender, and let's say we had a similar case, the money that was spent for one court hearing to bring somebody in and all of that staff and all of the energy, that money then gets to be put in the community instead of in locking people up. That money gets to be put in investing in people and getting them to recognize maybe they wanted to be a doctor and they got sidetracked. Maybe they want to be a car salesman. Maybe they want to be a school teacher. And so the resources are there early on being spent in positive ways instead of constrictive, separating ways.
Yeah, because the cost of incarceration
yes,
is phenomenal. The cost of court procedures is phenomenal, and the cost of foster care, and it is all phenomenal compared to a scheme that provides a well-being service,
Yes.
compared to having one or however many counselors you need at college. And I've faced this conversation so many times where I've been met with, you know, the kind of remarks like, well, we shouldn't need this kind of service at school. No, we shouldn't if we lived in an ideal society where every child was valued and nurtured. But sadly, that isn't the case. So absolutely, I mean, one of my authors, and I connect you with him, but Gethin Jones is
Yes.
he himself. Do you know Gethin?
I've read some of his stuff. Yes.
Yeah, so he's doing a remarkable program. He's working with Ministry of Justice here to do is virtually what you're doing, you know, to change the systems and really to nurture the children that are in foster care, and those that are just literally, you know, going through such difficult times. I recently interviewed another author of the Being Fine book, who's coming in second edition. He's collated stories, and actually one of them is from a girl that was in foster care. And I'm not even going to go into the level of trauma this poor girl suffered, but I remember seeing it as a police officer. It's still happening. There's abuse, there's violence, there's aggression, and it's very normalized and that's the worst, most tragic thing. It's very normalized in these homes, and so how on earth? And these are the children that are the. I think you've got to have a focus, haven't you, with a policy, with a strategy. And I think it's great that you're focusing on these children that are most vulnerable. And how about well-being and kind of I know of meditation classes. British School of Meditation are trying to get meditation at every school in the UK at the moment. That's one hell of a task. But how does that feature? Is that featuring in what you're offering? Is that
so it features in what I offer in some other realms of my world. It's not specific. It's one option within this idea of providing supports across the school. What I've seen in the United States generally is that they use it for children who get in trouble, that you give them meditation as alternative. My suggestion, and it sounds like what y'all are talking about doing, is provide it for all children. I'm a Dharma teacher within the Buddhist practices. Thich Nhat Hanh is the lineage that I am connected to. And I lead meditation and wellness trainings for public defenders and for what I call change agents, which really can be anybody, because this work to be human and live is challenging. And so to take that time, like we can do it right now, I can feel my feet on the ground. I can feel the chair underneath me. My breath is always with me. So when I get in that hurriedness, when I get in a stress place, if I can stop and take 3 deep breaths, it tells the body from a physiological standpoint, you are not in a place of stress, fight or flight. I don't need to be there. And so that component for children matters. And what we know is when we bring it in a school setting, the children benefit, the staff and the teachers benefit. What we also know is when we have those sort of environments that are positive, that have services for children that are engaging, teacher happiness and retention is higher. So that shows the interconnectedness. It's really important for us everybody, to take the time to be grounded, even if it's 5 minutes a day, even if it's at a stoplight, to breathe deep, in line at the grocery store, to take the time and just breathe. A lot of folks, friends of mine, are like, I can't do meditation because I think all the time. And we have this idea that the point of meditation is not to think. Our minds were created to think, so the thoughts are to be there. The question is we follow it. It's sort of like a cloud. And so the other piece, if you haven't done meditation and you want to try it just for a few minutes, just sit like Jo and I are both seated. I can feel the comfort of the chair with me, the feet on the ground. You can do it with your eyes open. You can do it with your eyes closed. And it's focusing on your breath. As you breathe in, just feel your breath to your lungs. And then as you breathe out, feel it go back out. And that's your focus. And I'll tell you, when I do my meditation in the morning, sometimes what pops in is, I got to remember to call so-and-so. That's going to happen. The idea of meditation is to say, oh, it's a thought, and let it go and go back to my breath. It's giving us a chance to not do and to simply be. And I'll tell you, Jo, that really just a few minutes in a day makes all the difference in the world. To being present. There are times when my partner will say, you haven't meditated a day, haven't you? She can tell. Because my energy is different. My engagement is different. And so bringing that to schools is a really great way to have children engaged. And what we know, so the Dalai Lama actually worked with Emory University. They've got a whole curriculum of engaging mindfulness in K through, I think it's kindergarten through 5th grade, but it may be through 12th grade. And I'll share, I had the honor of being in India with the Dalai Lama when Emory released the most recent curriculum. And one of the feedbacks they've gotten is the parents have talked about how different the children are when they get home. They're more at ease. They're helping in the kitchen. And so it's just this idea that we've gotten to a place, and I think this is part of the pandemic. I don't know if you want to go down this road. But part of the pandemic is us stopping and having to sit still, and because there was so much going on that really the earth and our body said, you got to stop, you got to sit, you need to isolate in the sense of being in your own. And when we take care of ourselves in the singular, I can show up better for you as my friend. I can show up better for my family. I can be more grounded in the work that I'm doing. It doesn't mean that stress won't come through. The Buddha says there is suffering. That's the first noble truth. I used to resist that, and I guess maybe it's true. The question is, how do we respond to it? Things can be chaotic around us, and we can be in the center of the tornado rather than being part of the tornado. So,
yeah. And isn't that, hopefully anyone watching this or listening to this on the podcast will just consider where they can bring a moment of meditation into their lives. I mean, I would implore, if I was still teaching now, in fact, this is funny that you're on the show today, because I've just had an hour's call with someone who is just getting me some voluntary work in my local schools where I live now. So I'm really excited to be going back into schools, into the education environment, which I absolutely love. It's part of my my being, and I will be, fully promoting every teacher I come across and have the opportunity to meet, to just engage with their students in meditation. Every teacher can do that now, just with 5 minutes. 5 minutes at the start of every lesson. I know schools here are doing this. But I really think even if you have children that are phenomenally challenged and they still fidget, and they just creating the energy of someone in the classroom will get it fully, and someone will be able to focus fully. And the resonance of that one child and the teacher being fully present in that will have an impact. We are energetic beings. We're fully impacted by what's around us as well as what's within. So, I just think everyone can bring this in. When it was International Women's Day last year, I was very honoured to give a talk to Citibank, which is obviously a bank that you'll be very familiar with. It's US-based. The first thing I did was a meditation, and I gave Reiki to, I think it was 130 guests at the event, and nobody had ever done that before. But I just felt the need to bring down and bring to centre the moment of International Women's Day. And actually now I bring it into every talk I do. Every talk I do starts with, and sometimes you get the odd look. So you get that kind of eyebrow raising. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me, just because, there are people that haven't gone down this path yet. Thankfully, like you say, Caroline, over the last year, this has been monumental mindfulness for me. And for many people, and I think there's a lot of potential here. Before, as time has ticked away, but before we kind of just come to a conclusion, I'd like to bring in, obviously, gender and equality. Again, I can only imagine how your path has been for you, Georgia. What has that been like for you to come through the ranks and actually progress a career in what I should imagine. Tell us about whether that is very male dominated and your experience, if you could.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for that opportunity, Jo. So I have to start with my foundation, and that is I'm the youngest of three, and I have two older brothers that I started running behind early on. And because I wanted, that's what you do. And so for me, I actually do a little bit of a shift and become aware of the fact that as a woman, I was supposed to be quiet. As a woman, I was supposed to sit back. And when I had that awareness, like in my mid-20s, which is fascinating, but I lift that up in part to say there are different types of models within the court system. As a attorney, what I often found was the older attorneys that were male and white would have a tendency, I can think very clearly, of having meetings, and they would almost literally pat me on the top of the head. You just sit there and do what you, and they didn't do it in a way that they meant to. So this is the thing I want to lift up is, and say to the men that are watching, when we talk about this, we're not saying that you're bad or it's a thing that maybe you're not aware of. And so I lift that up as well. And the question in part is, how do you keep pushing forward? The thing to me, the most dramatic view of not just how women are treated, but sometimes how women treat women, is the election here in the United States where Hillary Clinton lost. And something like 51% of the white women who voted for the male candidate. And what is that about? And so in my moving up in my engagement, there had to become awareness, and I was already sort of a very vocal person. The piece that I had to step into was where other women in the room, to say to them, speak up. You are powerful. You have, and so that they began to lift up as well. It's really remarkable to be with women because we bring all sorts of perspectives that aren't there. And I want to say, I don't mean to bring politics in a lot, but last night, the current administration, there was an address by our president, and our vice president is a woman of color, and Nancy Pelosi, who's also a leader in Congress. And so you had the president who's male with two women on either side, and just the visual. There's a way in which we bring just a different perspective. There's yin and yang. And so for me, the moving up has been needing to be self-aware, which I think all women need to understand, that we need to understand how what we're dealing with, and the fact that it's 2021 and we talk about breaking glass ceilings. And oftentimes it's women of color that are the first woman of color. And so the awareness that we can break the ceilings, that we lift everybody up together, and that things get more interesting, more creative, and there are more solutions when women are engaged in the leadership. So I hope that gets to what you were asking.
Yeah, I think it does. You raise some great points there. I mean, I love the point that you mentioned there about not judging. We do what we're used to doing. It's really quite simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I know I certainly do, and all my clients is that, it's the main issue they come to me with is that I just keep doing this. So it's easy just to keep doing what you're used to doing, and I feel the really valid point there was that it can be quite easy to judge male behavior, any behavior, but actually, unfortunately, until you're given an opportunity to actually address and to recognize, and this is across the board really, in any discrimination or any ism, as I call it, that you're actually mirroring and actually giving a moment for someone to look at their behavior, because without doing that, just to come in at the jugular and say, you've just done that, and yes, it may require, for the woman's point of view, I've been there myself, when you're the only female in the room, it may require you stepping up a little bit, using a slightly louder voice than you would normally, but staying true to yourself. I feel it can be done, and you've achieved that in your role. And I should imagine it's phenomenally male led. Your organization. Is it?
Our executive, our founder though is a woman. She was a juvenile court judge, Sharon Hill, some years ago, created Georgia Appleseed. But there are our current executive director and the one before are male. And I will tell you that our executive director really works within himself and looking at the organization as a whole, recognizing that he's a white, straight male. What does that mean for him and educating himself? He puts so much energy into continuing to grow himself and also creating a space where each of us can grow as well around all of those issues and having him as a leader and an understander of what's going on. And so I just, if he were here, I would really lift up Michael Waller to say he is working hard and doing great things to use his leadership in a way that doesn't keep people down. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited to hear what you're offering, and obviously I can connect you with Gethin, but it's just fascinating and it warms my heart. I've still got a lot of friends in the police force to know that the systems are changing, and these children that deserve every opportunity that every child has are being supported more than they were, which is really exciting. I'd like to at this point just mention and sort of bring up the wonderful Teresa Corso who brought us together, and mention the Thread. So there's a podcast called The Thread. It's available on all your podcast channels and also on Facebook. The Thread, it's got a beautiful blue brand color. Caroline and I were very blessed, I feel, to be as part of a very powerful, moving, distressing, but positive conversation about race. And that's available on that podcast, as well as many other amazing interviews that Teresa and her co-partner Catherine have done. So I'm really excited, Caroline, to be receiving your chapter soon for the next Women Leading book. But on that point, I'd just like to mention I'm looking for some male authors. So every time I create a leadership book, it is called Women Leading, but actually it's more about equality and about stepping up leadership, changing our leadership for our new world. The next book is called Women Leading in Our New World. If you're a guy and you're watching this and you have a passion for equality and you have a message about where you would like to see leadership going and why, then please get in touch with me at ProperBooksPublishing@gmail.com. We'd love to have you in the book, as much as I'm very happy to publish with all virtually women. We've got one male. I don't want to say he's a token male, but at the moment he looks a bit like that, and he definitely isn't meant to be. So I'd love more male authors for this conversation, because I know there's so many men out there that are hoping and aspiring to create more equality in all the different levels that they can. So I'd love to hear from you. Caroline Durham, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really super duper to hear from you.
So glad to be with you, Jo, and it's been a pleasure. And I know you and I have more conversations to have online, offline, and thank you for the opportunity.
It's such a pleasure. You can get hold of Caroline on LinkedIn if you'd like to, and obviously look up Georgia Appleseed. I'm sure there's plenty of information there on the internet for you. And yeah, wishing you the very best. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We will be back again actually next Friday at 12 p.m. BST, not GMT now, BST, 12 p.m. with the next Women Leading show. And you obviously the book at the moment is available on Amazon. That's it from me. I'm Jo Baldwin Trott. Take care for now. Have a great day, whatever you're up to. Bye.